Okay, so the first thing that's kind of a pivot or kind of a hint at what's coming next on a question like that is when they tell you the customer's tax bracket. The minute you encounter a question where they tell you the client's tax bracket, you know that you're either going to be asked the tax-free equivalent or taxable equivalent, and then you might even be asked about a recommendation. Now, regardless of what version we're going to do, we're going to need to take 1 or 100%. There's a lot of ways to do math. I like to think of this as either of 100 cents of my dollar, right? A dollar has 100 cents, or each of my dollars, the government is confiscating from me 35%. I'm joking, but taxing, right? So what I'm really left with is 65 cents of every dollar, or 65%. So regardless of what version of this you're going to have to do, the minute I get a question and tells me somebody's tax bracket, I'm going to do that. Now, they're either going to give me a taxable yield and want to know the tax-free equivalent. So my client, I'm considering buying or getting my client to buy a taxable bond, a corporate bond, for example, with an 8% coupon. Nominal yield, fixed or stated rate of return. And so we know already we can shop the answer set and know that the tax-free equivalent is going to be something less than 8, right? Because the government's taking part of your money. And so what I'm interested in here is finding out after I pay taxes, what is the tax-free equivalent? And so if this is the one they're asking me, if this is the one they're going to ask me, I'm going to multiply to find this out, right? And so I'm going to times 100 minus your tax bracket. Now, we already did that. What I'm saying here is I'm left with a net return on that of 65% or 0.65. And so now we do the math. And I say in your tax bracket, getting 8 after you pay taxes, let me get my calculator. I'm going to take 8 and I'm going to times it by 0.65. I say in your tax bracket, getting 8 and paying taxes is the equivalent of getting 5.2 tax-free. So this leads us to now saying, if we have a muni paying 6, the guy should buy the muni, right? Because that's more than 5.2. And if the muni pays 4, he should buy the taxable bond. He has 5.2, right? So that is called the tax-free equivalent. Again, getting 8% taxable yield in your bracket is the equivalent of getting 5.2 in a tax-free equivalent immunity. Now, the other thing that shows up is to go the other direction. So now we say on the test, we're considering buying a tax-free bond. And maybe we say the tax-free bond, the muni bond, has a coupon, a nominal yield of 4. And it's not fair to compare a 4% muni to a 7 or 8% taxable bond. We can't compare apples to oranges. We got to make fair comparisons. Now, if this is the one they ask you to do, then we say, okay, well, now we're going to divide. And so we're going to divide here is the 4%. Again, let me get this here, boom. The 4%, we're going to divide that by 100% minus your tax bracket. In this case, again, we should do that right out of the gate. That's 0.65. And what we're solving for here again is what is the taxable equivalent yield? What is the taxable equivalent of a 4% muni in your tax bracket? And so if we take our calculator now and we do this, boom, I find out that 4% divided by 0.65 is 6.15. So again, the point is, if we have a taxable bond paying more than that, you should buy that corporate bond because 7 is better than 6.15. If the corporate bond pays 6, you should buy the muni. And so again, very, very testable. Now, that was, who was that? Was that John? If you would like, Isaac, if you'd like, you can unmute and ask me any questions if you'd like about that, but that is definitely something you should be prepared to do on your exam. If not, we'll move on to the next thing that's in the chat for us to talk about.
I'll do my video too. So when you're dealing with do you have like any like brain shortcuts just to remember? Do you either going the multiplication route or the division route?
I don't have any shortcut for that, but I would if we had like a question. And one of the tricks I like, and it gets you to a 50, gets rid of one of the choices right away, is so then we know when we're going with the tax-free yield, it's going to be a higher number.
Okay.
Right? It's going to be something more than 4. And we know we're starting with the taxable yield, it's going to be a lower number. So you can shop the answer set and eliminate anything that isn't more than 4. And that sometimes will get you, it depends on who wrote the question. They might have been asleep at the switch. And that might get it. In general, Isaac, I would say in general, it's more likely you're going to be dividing on the test than multiplying in any circumstance. So for example, parity. To get parity of the bond, you multiply. To get parity of the stock, you divide. And what I'm saying, Isaac, is more often than not in these multiply divide scenarios, you're going to be dividing. It's mostly going to be the division one. So that would be kind of my default stance is, I'm going to have to divide something. And if I can't decide what to divide, I take the first number and I would divide that by the second number.
Well, I can say, just as a quick little kudos and from my coaching call, I actually did get a question on current yield, and I know I got it right because of my coaching call. So
well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
So,
I don't know about you, Isaac, but when I take a test, I like to get to the first question I know the right answer to. I go, woo, something on this test I actually know. Hopefully I'm not like 30 questions deep before I find something that, it looks familiar. Okay, so let's see what we got next. My pleasure, my pleasure. So the next one is Phil. I don't know, John. Do you want me to show you how to do buying power? Is that something you want me to show you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I got lost when it asked me to compute the buying power the investor had.
Yeah, so